Hey everyone, my name is Sara Harberson. I am America's college counselor. It's so good to see you all. I want to make sure I welcome all of those high school seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, and obviously parents as well. This is a very busy time of year for college admissions. Obviously, we have high school seniors who are making final decisions by Saturday, the May 1st deadline. There are a few colleges out there with later dates like May 3rd, but most students will be making a final decision by Saturday. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me. Obviously, we have a lot of high school seniors who are on a wait list as well, so feel free to ask questions about the wait list, merit appeals, final transcripts, anything that is on your mind. Obviously, those high school juniors are beginning to build a college list. Hopefully you have a chance to visit some schools. If not right now, then the summertime. And also, I noticed that there are a lot of questions, at least in my AN 2022 group, about AP exams, which are approaching in a matter of a couple of weeks. So if you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. We always have a lot of freshmen and sophomores joining us, and you might have questions about what to do this summer or what classes to take, so I'm really excited to be here. I will mention that for any of those families who have a student in the class of 2022, if you needed a reason to join Application Nation class of 2022, this will be your reason. We just launched the one-on-one sessions for all of those AN 2022 students, those Application Nation students who are current high school juniors are going to be doing a lot of one-on-one sessions in the month of May and June. This is something that I only offer to Application Nation students, and it is actually my most popular offer. So if you needed a reason, that might be it. I hope you join Application Nation and join our community and have a one-on-one session with me. And in those sessions, I get a student prepared for a real college interview, but I ask so many questions that no one's going to ask, even beyond what an admissions officer would ask. And that helps me identify essay topics for the student. So at the end of junior year, we can begin talking about topics and the college essay. And obviously, if you have a one-on-one session with me, I also like to help with your soundbite. On that note, why don't we get started with some questions that have already come in? Please let me know where you're coming from as well. I always like to see that. I see some familiar faces, or familiar names, I should say. So it's always good to see those. All right, first question. Hi, Sarah. How will the Ivies view students who take language about, not sure what that says, second language? SL is not a choice since he will end up making a 3 or 4. He will be doing 4 higher levels: math, physics, chemistry, and psychology for standard level English and Chinese. Okay, I'm not sure what the question is, but I will say that for students who are applying to traditional 4-year colleges, I definitely recommend the 5-4 plan. That means all 5 core subjects for all 4 years. If you're in the IB program, I will tell you, it almost forces you to do the 5-4 plan plus much more. In terms of a second language, if you're interested in it, I would say if you have an interest in languages, linguistics, international studies, or international affairs, having a second language would be cool, but obviously continuity is going to matter the most to colleges. They want to see a student who continues at least with one language, ideally for all 4 years of high school. All right, next question. Hi, Sarah. Oh my gosh, that's a name from the past. For recommendation letters, how do we avoid providing a brag sheet when the teacher asks for one? What should we offer instead? All right, Sarah, it's so good to see you on here. So brag sheets, what are they? Well, a lot of teachers and college counselors will ask the student and sometimes the parent to fill out what's called a brag sheet. And I'm not a big fan of them because what ends up happening is everything that you put into the brag sheet could end up in your letter of recommendation, which could be a good thing. But if you're providing the brag sheet for both teachers that are writing for you and your college counselor, and it's the same one, they tend to write the same types of letters. They bring up the same anecdotes and skills and experiences of the students. So what I tell my families in Application Nation is, number one, if you are being asked to fill out a brag sheet, and multiple letter writers are asking for it, make sure that you give a very individualized brag sheet for each letter writer so that they are bringing up different things about who you are. I often will say that the application should have this beautiful layering effect. It shouldn't hammer the same stories again and again. So one way to avoid hammering and more layering is to make sure that each letter writer gets different information to share in their letters of recommendation. You just want to be careful because some of the brag sheets are going to ask questions that don't always put the student in the best light. So for example, they might ask the student, what has been your biggest challenge, your biggest weakness as a student? What is something that you wish you could change that you've done in high school? Sometimes they will ask, list 5 adjectives to describe yourself. And if you've read my book, SOUNDBITE, you know that I'm not a big fan of adjectives because they're very interchangeable. And they don't really say anything about the student because they're being said about a lot of students. So if they ask for 5 adjectives, I would just try to be as kind and appropriate as possible, but just say, I'd like to use 5 nouns or 5 verbs instead. And that usually can make a big difference in your brag sheet. All right, next question. Should a student go test optional if their ACT is in the bottom 25th percentile? I'm starting to hear that schools let fewer kids in without test scores. Okay, so my general advice is if a college is test optional and the students' test scores are in that middle 50% range of accepted students, and you want to try to get your hands on the most recent data. If you're looking at data right now for a college's middle 50% scores for the ACT or SAT, it's usually from last year. And last year's data could look very different than this year's data. So constantly check their website, but usually a college will update all of their admissions information for the most recent class year sometime this summer, sometimes even mid to late summer. So keep checking back because we might see that those average SAT scores will go up. If the student is in the bottom 25th percentile for SAT or ACT scores, I generally do not recommend that they submit those scores if the college is test optional and if that student especially is coming from a majority background, an overrepresented state, is applying to a very competitive major or program. Next question, advice on dropping an AP class second semester of senior year for an honors class after student receives acceptances. All right, so here's the thing. You will list what classes you are taking for senior year, usually at the very beginning of senior year, late summer, early fall, and things can change. Let's say you want to drop an AP class second semester of senior year and take a study hall or take an honors class in its place. You are required to contact all of the colleges that you have active applications to or any colleges that you are awaiting a decision or have already been admitted to. So it's your responsibility to do that. You don't want to be in a situation where you get accepted to a college or university, you end up sending in a deposit on Saturday to enroll there, and then they get your final transcript and they see that you dropped that AP class second semester. They're going to be really upset and you don't want to put your offer of admission in jeopardy. So if you need to drop it because your grade is really low, then you probably want to reach out to your admissions officer and find out what they recommend, especially if you've already been admitted. If you've already been admitted, you have a little bit more wiggle room. They're probably going to give you advice. They're not going to be happy that you're dropping a class, but they're going to probably give you some good advice about what you need to do to formally notify the admissions office about that. It's not something I recommend unless the student is really struggling, meaning they are getting a C or lower in that class. Next question. Hi, Andrew. I took AP Euro as a freshman, which is unusual at my school. It's very unusual wherever you go to high school. Should my counselor highlight this in her recommendation because I want to study history, or is this trivial? It's not trivial at all, but admissions officer will see that you took this class. It'll be right on your transcript. However, you bring up a good point. If you are the only freshman at your high school that's ever taken AP Euro, that's something, yeah, your college counselor can absolutely point out. But the admissions officer is going to be looking at, obviously, when you took it, the grade that you got in it, and if you have an AP score. If you're applying to highly selected colleges and you got a 5, obviously that's going to be really impressive, but it shows more evidence to back up your interest in history. So especially if you were the only freshman in your class or the only freshman to take it, yes, your college counselor can absolutely mention that in the letter of recommendation. Next question, loved your book, Soundbite. Thank you. Do you think the number of applications flooding stays the same next year for the 2022 graduates? Yes, I think that for colleges that extend their test optional policies, I believe they will continue to see very large applicant pools. If the college resorts back to requiring SAT or ACTs, I believe they will see a pretty big decrease in the number of applications they receive. And so I think that's one of the reasons why so many colleges have already announced that they're extending their test optional policy for the class of 2022. But that's just my take. All right, next question. What are the chances to get accepted at Georgetown from the wait list this year, and how soon? Yeah, it's gonna, I haven't heard of a lot of students getting accepted off the wait list just yet. I will say that last year around this time, we were already hearing of a lot of colleges use their waitlist and accept students. I have not heard yet of any students being accepted off the waitlist at Georgetown, but what I can tell you about Georgetown, this is really going back 20, 30 years. They've had the same dean for decades. What I see with Georgetown is they end up waitlisting a lot of students. They use it as a yield tool. They know that if they accept a student in regular decision, versus a student off the wait list, they know that they have a higher yield rate. There's a higher chance that the student who is accepted off the wait list will say yes than the student that they admitted in regular decision or even early action. So with Georgetown, they've really historically used their wait list to control their acceptance rate and try to get their yield rate up even higher. So I would love to see them use their wait list, but I haven't heard of them using it just yet. With Saturday being the May 1st enrollment deposit deadline for most colleges, you almost have to anticipate that colleges are going to get back into the office or get back online if they're virtual on Monday, and they will assess what their enrollment deposits look like. So you can almost guarantee that if a college has not met their target for the freshman class in terms of enrollment deposits, that they will probably begin to go to the wait list in earnest the first 2 weeks of May. So next week and the week after should be very, very busy. All right, next question. What is a good target SAT score? Well, it really depends on the type of student you are and the types of colleges that you are applying to. In Application Nation and also in Soundbite, my book, I really make it clear that you want to first identify the type of student that you are. Are you a reach, target, or a likely student? And based on that categorization, you can then make sure that you have a well-balanced list with reach colleges, target colleges, and likely colleges. And that will help you determine what test score you really need to get. If you are looking at highly selective colleges, they've gotten much more competitive this year, but testing was always a big factor. And so even if a college is test optional, you better believe that if you submit your test scores, they're going to consider them, and they will influence the admissions decision. So if you're applying to highly selected colleges, I generally say really a 15, 20 or higher on the SAT to be competitive, especially if you are a majority student coming from an overrepresented state. And I would say a 34 or higher on the ACT puts you in a safer position. But if you're applying to other types of colleges with higher acceptance rates, you won't need to reach that type of a score. That's really, really difficult to get. All right, next question, Tracy. Hi, Sarah. Trying to figure out if it is better to send the SAT score or not to schools that are test optional. Yes, it's challenging to figure that out. My son has a high GPA, many AP and honors classes. He got an 800 on the math portion, but only a 630 on English for a total of 1430. Much higher, Tracy, than I could have ever gotten, so I'm still impressed. Many schools he's looking at want a 1480 to a 1500, but is it beneficial because he got a perfect 800 on the math? I think it really depends on the type of institutions he's applying to and the major that he's applying to. So what you want to do when you're looking for what are the average SAT scores or ACT scores for the colleges on the list, you want to look at both the combined score of the SAT and the individual sections, because that's how admissions officers view it. They will get usually a super score of the SAT, for example, and most colleges do super score the SAT, by the way, but they will also want and be looking at the breakdown between the two sections. So if he's going more into STEM or engineering focus, I'd say it'd be really great for a college to see that 800, but if it's a highly selective college, I'd be concerned that they'd be seeing that 630. So I'd say probably to be safe if you're applying to highly selected colleges, you've got to go with that combined score first and foremost. That really has to be your guiding force or your guiding decision about whether or not to submit test scores. Next question from Carrie. Any suggestions for the best way to get the most in a Why Us essay that only gives you 150 words? I know, right? What's the best way to show you know what you want from each particular school and not sound generic? This is a really hard essay prompt, okay? So you will find that a lot of colleges on their supplements will ask supplemental essay prompts. And the most common one is basically, why us? Why are you applying to our college or university? If you only have 150 words, guys, that's like a couple sentences. That's like a short paragraph. That's not a lot of room to really go into much depth. So what you want to be careful of is all of the common reasons that the admissions officer, right here, there you go. All the common things that the admissions officer is talking about in the information session, the tour guide is mentioning that you see plastered all over their websites and in their brochures. Stay away from those themes because you have to almost anticipate that most students are going to bring up those same themes and topics. So you have to be clever with your 150 words. I would say any experience or interaction or moment in time that you were on that campus or you heard something that connects with your academic major or something that really resonates with you, that can be a way, that can be your jumping off point. But really, if it's 150 words and it's a why us, you do not want to stick to those common buzzwords like interdisciplinary, diversity, community, all those common things that you keep hearing at every single college. The admissions officer won't want to hear that. They want to hear something very, very distinctive. All right, next question. Hi, Sarah. My son is a junior, has taken 3 years of Latin. 1 year was a high school credit class in middle school. He did not continue this year and will not take it in his senior year because he was chosen with a small group of students to take an AP research class. Will he need to explain his reasons for making this decision? I think it will be really, really important that his college counselor mention this AP research class, and that's the reason why he won't be taking it senior year. But it sounds like he didn't take it this year as a junior either. And if there wasn't a scheduling conflict, most admissions officers would hope that the student took Latin as much as they possibly could, or any of the languages, foreign languages. I know that Latin is an ancient language. So yes, I would definitely recommend that the college counselor mention that in the letter of recommendation. Ideally though, the classes that you take in middle school, even if they were high school level, it doesn't feel, it's not the same as taking a high school class in high school, especially for the more competitive colleges. So just keep that in mind. I'm a big fan of trying to take the same language for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade if possible, no matter what you took before high school. That said, sometimes there is a scheduling conflict, sometimes there is a class that the student really wants to take, and they've got a full schedule, so definitely get the college counselor to say something in that letter of recommendation. Next question. My school offers advanced calculus, the highest course in the handbook for math. Apart from that, they have Stanford online math course. So if my son has to exhaust the math curriculum, which one should he finish? So it's really important that when a student is advanced in a subject matter, and math is a common one, especially for those students that took, geometry or even algebra 2 in middle school, they come to a point in high school where they really do run out of math classes to take. What I would recommend first and foremost is always exhaust the curriculum at your high school. So whatever that is, if it is AP Calculus AB, take it. If it's AP Calculus BC, take it. If it's multivariable calculus or differential or linear algebra, try to take it at your high school. If your high school doesn't offer those post-calculus classes, absolutely, you can definitely look at other places that will offer it. Stanford Online High School offers a lot of advanced coursework. Johns Hopkins CTY also offers credit-bearing, grade-bearing classes. UC Scout. There are a couple of other online high schools that you can use. BYU also has some online classes for high school students. So you just want to make sure that it is accredited, you're getting full credit for the class, and you're getting a grade. But in that case, you usually have to submit a separate transcript from that online institution or another high school or a college to the colleges on your list so that they know that you took that class and got a really good grade in it. Regarding the 5-4 rule, do high school courses from 8th grade on the transcript count? I think they count for families and they mean a lot for families, but they don't mean as much for admissions officers. So there are going to be a lot of high schools, both private and public high schools, that will actually include 8th grade classes or classes taken in 7th and 8th grade that were high school classes and even the grade. So if you took Spanish 1 in 8th grade, if you took geometry from the high school in 8th grade, sometimes it's actually listed on the transcript. Admissions officers don't pay too much attention to it. They're really focused on everything done, experienced, and taken from 9th grade on. All right. Hi, Sarah. Great to see you again. My son is a junior, and he took 4 Spanish courses, 3 of them in middle school and 1 in 9th grade. He does not want to take another Spanish course. Is that sufficient for him to apply, since many schools require 2 years of foreign language courses in high school, or should he take another foreign language class in senior year? The quick answer is yes, he should absolutely go back to his foreign language for senior year. Here's the thing. You can look up colleges' admissions requirements and you're going to see minimum requirements. That means the bare minimum. So if they say 2 years of foreign language, you always want to do more of that, especially if one of those 2 years was taken in middle school. So you just have to be careful. And again, the more selective a college is, the more they're going to be expecting that you follow that 5-4 plan as much as possible. They don't call it a 5-4 plan. I call it a 5-4 plan. I've got my whole lingo. But the thing is, the 5-4 plan will ensure that your curriculum not only meets the minimum requirements, but goes beyond that, because that's really what colleges want to see. You have to remember, these applicant pools are enormous in some cases. These colleges have their pick. They have an embarrassment of riches. So they're gonna be very picky because they have the applicant pool to be picky. Next question from Kathy. How do you view the Fashion Institute of Technology for advertising, marketing, and communication? My daughter was accepted to a couple of Division I universities, but FIT is her first choice. How does FIT compare to Division I schools? Well, first of all, Kathy, I love that she is considering FIT. I like to consider myself a creative. I am not an artist. I am not a fashion designer, but I love all creative types. So what you will find with FIT, though, is even though it can be a traditional 4-year program, you will have most of your classes within, you're gonna have a lot of arts classes to take and a lot of core classes that really overlap with the arts. So for example, if you want to be a fashion designer, they're going to encourage you to take some of those marketing, communication, and business classes because it's important to have those skills. So the breadth of her curriculum at FIT might not be as expansive as going to a traditional D1 college, usually university. So the course offerings are going to be a little bit more narrow. Doesn't mean limited, but more narrow in terms of staying in that arts field or arts related. And you also want to be aware that there aren't going to be Division I sports. There isn't going to be that traditional, 4-year college experience. I think most students who go to FIT, they're going to be wanting to do their craft. They're going to want to experience New York City. And having a campus life is not the same. So you just want to be aware that going to FIT, you're going there for New York City, you're going for that program, you're going to be around a lot of other creative people. If you go to a Division I school and you study communication, marketing, or business, it's going to be a much bigger environment, much bigger curriculum, much bigger social offerings in terms of college students on one campus, but that doesn't mean it's best for your daughter. So if she has her gut telling her she should go to FIT, I totally support it. All right, next question. What is super scoring? Good question. Okay, so super scoring is when a college will look at your highest scores on each section and combine them to create the highest SAT score or highest ACT score, regardless of when you took these tests. So let's take the SAT, for example. There are 2 sections, math and evidence-based reading and writing. I don't want you to worry about the essay section. That's going to be obsolete starting in July. So 2 sections of the SAT. You could take the SAT 3 times. Maybe the first time you got your lowest scores in both sections. Maybe the second time you did better on the math section. Maybe the third time you did better on the evidence-based reading and writing section. By super scoring, you could provide the math score from the second time and the evidence-based reading and writing score from the third time. And that together would combine your highest super scored SAT. The ACT is now doing this as well. The ACT has 4 main sections that combine to create a composite ACT score. The trouble is that not every college or not as many colleges are super scoring the ACT, but if they do, that means you could be submitting 4 scores from 4 different tests to create your highest composite super score. The good news is if you look at the Common Application, it actually forces you to create a super score, putting you in your best light. A lot of times though, colleges will do that automatically because they will say they want to put the student in the best light, but the reality is they want to put themselves in the best light. And so they want to use that super score because it will give them higher SAT and ACT scores for their admitted student body in the end. All right, one more question. All right. Do you recommend taking the ACT writing section? No, I do not. All right. So here's the thing. ACT has a writing section. The SAT has an essay section. They're basically just an extra section. Costs more money, more worries, more stress. Another section to study for when in reality, colleges don't care what score you get on that writing section of the ACT or what score you get on the essay section of the SAT. And that is why the College Board is being forced to eliminate the essay portion of the SAT, and I think it's only a matter of time until the ACT eliminates their writing section as well. All right, on that note, it was great to be back here again doing a Facebook Live. I usually do them every single month and we save them. You can check them out on my website. You can also check them out on Sara Harberson and Admissions Revolution Facebook pages. And just a quick reminder again, if you want to join Application Nation 2022, this is the time to do it because a lot of students want to do those one-on-one sessions with me so that I can help them with essay topics. I can edit their soundbite, and I can give them a whole lot of confidence going into those college interviews. So on that note, it was great to see you all. Have a great night. Bye-bye.